will be the title.
Oh, the title.
Delectable. Alright, say it. Delectable.
Delectable
insect.
Delectable insect. And Javier, what do we think delectable means?
Like something like.
algo que te puedes comer.
So we can eat it, but that's not what delectable means.
Es como. No sería algo como una comida. No, es como especial.
So we're thinking about a delicacy, which is special.
Sí, ándale.
So that's delicacy, but this is delectable.
¿Y qué ponía ahí? ¿Que la puedes colectar?
Nope. Anybody else? Or have you gone to keep guessing? That's good.
No, I'm done.
So I would like to point out what Javier said though, because he said delicacy, right? So if y'all remember, we read a book about delicacies, right? I think it was called
Coffee.
The coffee one.
La caja de coffee.
Yeah. So this is part of the same series, right? So here we're talking about delectable insects. So any more guesses as to what delectable means?
Usted dijo que nos iba a dar una de las paletas que tiene insects adentro.
Sí, y sí compré y no las he traído. Las encontré. So I'll bring them, okay?
Tiene paleta y tiene los estos.
Alright.
Yeah.
Let's look at delectable. So let's look at delectable. So just look at the first part of the word, D-E-L.
Del.
Del. What other word has del in it that actually means the same thing as delectable? Del. Alright, let's start with this. Do you think delectable means something good or bad?
Good.
Good, right? So if we're talking about good insects, and we're talking about eating them, what is it saying? Delectable.
Desechar.
No, this is child.
No, they're good.
They're good, right? Good in what way?
Like
Eating them. So they're what?
Delicious.
Delicious. Right, there we go. Delicious. So this book is titled Delicious Insects. Yes?
another way.
Yep, that's another word for delicious, so delectable, right? Something that tastes good. Alright. Do y'all think that, have you ever had insects? I know we talked about this a little before.
Sí.
What kind of insects have y'all tried?
Grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers? Let's try to
Fries.
Which one?
Así like in fried.
Oh yeah, fried, right? Fritos?
They're nasty, but they're good.
They're good but nasty.
Yeah, because they're están tostaditas, pero when you bite la colita, like sale aguado.
Oh yeah.
So it's like weird, but they're good.
They're weird but they're good.
Y
Definitely.
luego estás con que, porque te comiendo un grasshopper.
Yeah, so the texture might be like kind of gross even though it tastes good, right? What are some things you don't like because of the texture?
Yo no he comido nada de esos.
Huh?
Güey, el único. Entonces ya están muy weird, homie.
For example, I don't really like Jello because I don't like the texture of it. I don't know why. I just don't like it.
¿Ya?
Huh?
¿Qué digo?
Gelatina? Yeah, it doesn't taste that good,
It's
right?
good.
Well, it's good, but I don't like the texture. Like I like the taste, but
I don't like the
the
texture, pero yo la congelo.
Yeah. So
La congelo y así me la como.
it might be better. True. All right. So if you look at the back of the book, if you go ahead and flip your book for me. All right, we have a quick little summary about what the book is going to be about. Roberto, can you read the back of the book cover for us?
Yes, now. Eating insects. We eat mammals, like cows and pigs. We eat fish. We even eat birds, like chickens and turkeys. Why then it is so hard to imagine eating insects? While insects are not a typical part of the European or American diet, they are a regular and delicious part of the human diet in other parts of the world. Find out what's so great about eating insects and what it might be something you will want to try.
Alright, so just based on the summary, what do you think the author is going to try to persuade us to do? What's her whole point for writing the book?
Like, dice, para que tú lo intentes comértelo, like.
Forget about trying to eat them. Para que mires que we might see something nasty, pero en otras personas, en otros states. Es
Oh,
algo
it's like
muy
you're trying
bueno.
like to make them like eat them.
Yep. So like Roberto said, right? She wants to persuade us to try insects, and like Javier said, right? She wants us to be open-minded, right?
Chale, cook.
So wanting us to be open-minded to trying different things that we might think are weird, right? So for example, like just like the book says, for us, eating insects might be a little weird, but for some other people, that's actually probably pretty normal, right? Right? So just like Javier said, right? A lot of us eat insects. For example, the chapulines in Mexico, which they will actually talk about in this book.
¿Over?
Yeah.
Chale, me tengo una pregunta, ¿lo están grabando?
Sí, me están observando hoy.
Oh my god, ¿por qué otra vez?
Es para el fin de la año.
Mira que se pone la máscara.
No digas nada, imbécil.
I like the accountability. All right, let's go to the inside book cover. Go to the back. ¿Vale? ¿Tus ojitos? ¿Qué tienen tus ojitos? ¿Te duelen?
Tienen sangre, mis.
All right, so the inside back cover. All right, so we're gonna get a bit of a larger summary. All right. So it says insects on your plate. So listen carefully as I read. All right. We already kind of talked about what her argument might be, right? To try insects and be open-minded to new things. So I'm going to read it carefully. Insects on your plate. If you found a fly in your soup in New York, London, or Sydney, you might freak out. After all, flies aren't food, or are they? It all depends on your perspective. In countries such as Thailand, you might special order a plate of flies and gobble them up. In Cambodia, you can enjoy tasty tarantula. In Mexico, a basket of fried grasshoppers might be the snack you crave, which is what Javier mentioned. People in these countries aren't trying to be gross or daring. Insects and other related animals like scorpions and spiders have been a regular part of their diet for many years. As our planet population grows, how to feed the growing number of malnourished people around the world and ourselves is something we must consider. Insects are helpful and delicious and easy to harvest. Even if it makes you a little nervous, you'll never know how fantastic insect cuisine can be until you try it for yourself, or at least read a book about it. All right. So for one, yes, go ahead. Alright, so for one thing, right, we haven't read the whole book yet, but we did read a summary. What's one reason she gives us for as to why we should try insects?
Because you might like them.
Because you might like them, right? So it says they're delicious, right? You might like them. What else?
And they're like a diet thingy.
So when it says it's part of your diet, it means like a lot of
Oh.
So not like necessarily a diet the way we think about a diet.
So, like, they got a lot of nutrients, like, pueden ser buenos para tu cuerpo también.
Yep, they're nutritious, right? So helpful. They have a lot of nutrients.
Ya mira que era con mi abuela y comía like I don't know, como insects. Y lo tenía una caja llena de insects y se lo comía.
Oh really?
Yeah.
That's weird. Well, I mean, let's be open-minded, right? That's what the book is all about, right? You gotta be open-minded. Ezekiel.
También dice,
Ezekiel. What's another reason that we see in this little paragraph for why we should eat insects, or why we should make insects a part of our diet?
It's easy to harvest.
Easy to harvest, right? So it's a lot easier to make, right? So by harvesting means that we can get a bunch of insects and have them make more babies, right? They're a lot easier to harvest, right? Just how we do with cows, with chickens, and things like that.
man,
Yes?
ahora sí, what's the weirdest thing you have ever eaten?
Ooh, the weirdest thing I've ever eaten.
Algo raro, algo bien raro.
I mean, people think that tongue is weird. La lengua.
O de la vaca.
Yeah. Para nosotros no es raro, ¿verdad?
No.
Pero para otros a lo mejor. I don't know, honestly.
I snake before.
I've had.
Y armadillo.
Really?
Y venado.
I've had frog. I think that's the weirdest for me.
Oh, yo también con
Frog.
Es que nos gusta ir a cazar, por eso.
Oh, sí? Yeah.
So, he comido de eso. El armadillo es kind of weird porque you cook it in the same shell que tiene.
Mhm.
You chop it up super pequeño.
Oh, that's kind of cool because you're reusing the shell.
Pero sabe raro.
¿Sí?
Sabe como. Tiene el texto de como de plástico.
Plástico? Oh, is it like really chewy?
Yes.
Rubbery? Ah.
I'm like.
I don't want to try that. That doesn't seem like a texture I like. Alright, so really quickly, we already, without reading the book, right, we already found several things. They're healthful, they're delicious, and they're easy to harvest. Alright? Let's move forward. Alright, so as you're reading today, we're going to notice ways that the author supports her argument. So if you look at the first question on your worksheet, I want you to go ahead and answer that because we just talked about it, right? What is the author trying to persuade us to do with her book?
To show it to people, but they can be more interested to eat insects.
Yep, so go ahead and write that on your worksheet.
Wait, where's the worksheet?
That's right there.
So I read the same thing that I said?
Yeah, so remember guys, we're really pushing our writing this semester, so make sure you're writing full sentences.
¿En este lado?
Oh,
¿Este aquí? ¿Este lado?
Sí, esa. So,
Miren, dígame si está buena. Lo voy a decir, mire, mire, mire.
so I'll give y'all a sentence done. So the writer is trying to convince us to what?
Sería bien si le pusiera. He really wants to convince us to open our mind to the insect diet.
Good, I like that.
¿Está chida?
Yeah, that's it.
Ahora le puedo.
So I like that Javier included the fact that we should open our minds to it.
Pero mejor. Sí, el 10. Roberto fue ¿verdad? ¿Y qué hicieron, güey, cuando no me invitaron? ¿Por qué no me invitaron?
Y todo se mancha.
Es que, mira, güey, es que andaba bien pedo el sábado.
No, era no me regresado.
Sí, andaba bien pedo el sábado.
Eran las 2 de
Alright.
Era el cumpleaños de mi hermana, güey, me puse bien pedo.
Alright, so we looked, we know what she's trying to convince us to do, right? Have open minds, eat insects. Now we're going to look really quickly together at some of the ways she supports her argument. So go to page 9. So everybody flip to page 9.
¿Me estás manejando tú? Ah, ¿dónde fueron?
Se deben los humos. Fuimos a echar una vuelta nomás.
Me han dicho, güey, para agarrar mi troca ahí.
Alright, Javier, flip to page 9.
Oh.
Pero esa mi mamá me cachó. Me castigó.
Ah, cheque. ¿Dónde está el pollo y la vaca?
Sí.
Órale. Yo tengo un gallo como este,
Así bien bonito.
así blanco, y tengo un kikiriki.
Yo tengo un pinche gallo, pero mis perros se los comió. No, porque los sacamos, ¿verdad? It was like trying to let them be like afuera un ratito. Y luego yo pensé que los perros no iban a hacer nada.
Oh, sí.
Y luego cuando salí, eran como 2 minutos y ya estaba el gallo lleno.
Oh, está bien.
Mírame, estos son los que apenas compré. Los kikirikis, gallo fino.
Oh, they're so pretty.
De los más buenos.
¿Ya?
Están así, pero están de los de pelea, porque yo soy gallero.
Oh, sí.
Los peló.
Oh,
Y en todo fueron 300 baros. Pero tú, un gallo y 2 gallinas.
no está mal.
Feo. Ay, es mucho monito. Pero
Alright,
las
so
peleas.
let's look at the chart on page 9. So take a quick look at it. What are we seeing here in this chart?
Liz, ¿qué?
¿Qué estamos viendo? What are we seeing in the chart on page 9?
Pues por lo que yo pienso, aquí veo 3 cosas que muy se pueden comer en México, en otros lugares como China.
Yep, so we see three things that we can eat, right? Cattle, chicken, and grasshoppers. What else do we see in the chart? What is it showing us? What's the purpose of the chart?
Means why people think como cuando cocinas like el pig, right? Y luego dicen como, porque a veces nosotros comemos lo de adentro, like
The guts?
yeah.
Te está diciendo,
Y luego dicen like that's weird.
Yeah, you think it's weird, right? But we don't.
you eat las salchichas, they use la gut del puerco.
Yeah, no.
Le limpian y meten
Ah.
back la salchicha. Of course, if they're original, de las buenas. Si no son de las buenas, pues.
Yeah,
Oh,
so,
aquí, pues te dan la información de cuál es más difícil para criarse. Porque dice land needed and food feed needed.
yep, so here, right, so just like have your son, right? They're pointing out what it takes to actually harvest these animals, right? So, Bethesda, which one takes up the most to harvest?
No.
The cow, yep, the cow, right? And then what takes the least to harvest?
Grasshopper.
The grasshopper, right? So, looking at the chart, they're basically saying to get the same amount of meat from a cattle as you would from a grasshopper, and I know it's cut off, but you can see on page 9, right? For a cattle, you need 25 tons of crops to feed the cattle, and how much do you need for the grasshopper?
You need 4 tons.
6.
Yep, so
No,
4 tons or 3.6 tons, right? And then for the chicken, how many acres do you need to raise chickens?
6
Five.
y luego 5.4.
Yep, so 5, and then for the grasshopper, how much do you need?
0.17 acres.
Yep, 0.17 acres, right? So here, how does this support the writer's argument? What would her argument be with this chart?
Que los, they're easier and more, menos cansado a cuidar los grasshoppers que las vacas because cows need more space and more food.
Yep, so she's probably gonna say we should eat insects because they take up less resources.
Y sí,
¿Ves? Pero
cierto.
si comemos bastante insects. Oh.
No, espérate.
No, you're good, Go ahead.
Pero si comemos bastante insects, ya no va a haber bastantes insects.
That's true, right? That's a very valid concern, right? Because if we move all totally to eating insects, at some point we're
Va a
probably
haber bastante vacas y chickens.
Yep.
Pero no, güey, porque los insects también se comen lo que son las vacas, se comen los insects, también los pollos y extra food. Before us is already something
Por eso,
eating it, so
pero-
it's gonna eat
Pero si nosotros nos comemos todos los insects, ya no va a haber.
That's what I'm saying, right? But that's kind of the same argument I think she would make about the cattle and the chicken, right?
I mean,
But let's go ahead and look at our next page. So go to page. I forgot what page this is.
this is totally off guard, right? Pero si quiere, vendo camas y cosas así.
Oh, see?
Yeah, this is mine, güey, pero así es lo que vendo yo. Not sure.
All right, let's go to page 4. So go to page 4, guys.
También caras las camas son de madera.
See?
Sí, pero son muy buenas.
All right, go to page 4. All right, and here they're gonna talk. The author is talking about something, a problem that we have, right? And Ezekiel, what's that problem that we have that she's talking about here? It was also mentioned in the summary.
On that?
Yeah.
So you're asking me the problem?
Okay.
You're
Yeah. So
asking,
what's the problem she's bringing to the table here?
about the, it's about the health crisis?
The health crisis, right? So it says many people around the world, including some people in the U.S. and Europe, don't have enough money to eat. They are malnourished, lacking the basic nutrients to stay active and healthy. All right. And when we say malnourished, what does that mean? Ezekiel, when we say malnourished, what does that mean? That these people don't have what?
Not too much food.
Yeah, they don't have food, right? And they don't have nutrients specifically, right? So remember when we broke down the word malnourished last semester? Right? We can break it down through here, and mal means what? bad, right? Which kind of sounds like bad in Spanish. And nourish is referring to nutrients.
Bad nutrients.
So that means we don't have nutrients, right? People don't have nutrients. Or maybe they have vitamins. I don't know. Right? So here, what's the author's argument for why we should probably have insects?
Because, like we were saying, they're good. They're easy to catch, and they got really good nutrients.
Yep.
They're really rich on nutrients.
Yep, so just like he said, right? They're really easy to make, like harvest, just like Ezekiel had mentioned when we read the summary. They're easier to harvest and they have more nutrients for less of the price, right?
Mi pregunta es, how many do you need to get in the level that you're like full of nutrients? Like, ya no necesitas más.
That's a really good question, and it's actually answered in the book. So whenever we get to independent reading, I want to see if you can find it.
Oh,
Alright. Alright, lastly, let's go to page 11. So flip over to page 11.
Cuando terminamos de la 11 para el baño.
Sí. Page 11.
Ahora no en Austin.
Alright, and beside what do we see in page 11? An ant, and what else do we see? A lobster, right? And what do you think, without reading anything, right? What are some of the things what do you think the author is doing here?
Showing us the parts.
They're showing us the parts, right? And why would she be showing us the parts between these two things?
To know what kind of.
To show you that they're similar.
To show us that they're similar, right?
Because, like, you don't know more people like seafood. Like, they're good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see an ant, you're not gonna eat it like one of these.
Yeah.
But they're trying to show you that they're similar. You never thought about it.
Yeah, so perfect, right? So here she's showing us the similarities between an ant, which we know to be an insect, and between a lobster, which we think about as a sea animal, right? We don't really think about a lobster as a sea animal, but if you actually look at them closely, they have a lot of similarities, right? So Roberto, what do you think her argument would be here for as to why we should eat insects? This one might be a little bit more difficult, but what would her argument be? She's showing us two pictures, one of an insect, one of a sea animal. Why do you think she's doing this? How is she trying to convince us that we should eat
She's kind of like making like the ant being like the same thing as a lobster, but like it tastes like different, but it's still the same thing.
Yes, perfect. All right. So her argument here, as you will see, will be that she's going to say we should eat insects because technically we're kind of eating them already. We don't think we are. But a lot of the things that we eat look and are like insects, right? So a lobster, for example, it's not necessarily an insect, but actually kind of looks like one, and they're very, very similar. All right. Awesome. All right, so we've talked about a lot of arguments that she makes, right? You have been really good about this. Alright, so now we're going to do some independent reading. So the time right now is 9:58. What do you have here?
Yes.
Yes?
10:23.
Oh, yes, I did. Okay. Yeah. Alright. Yeah. So, wait, let me just give us the directions and then y'all can go to Russian. So, for the next 15 minutes, you're going to independently read and answer the questions that I provided on the worksheet. So, if you look at the worksheet, right, we already answered number 1. We know that she's trying to convince us. For number 2, we've looked at a lot of different arguments. It's fine if you want to put one that we've already talked about, but I want to see if you can find anything else. Alright? Try to find 2 more things that we haven't talked about. Or, for example, for the global health crisis, be more specific for as to why we should eat insects for them. Number 4, number 3, that's kind of self-explanatory. 4, I want you to tell me why you agree with the author, right? That's more of your opinion, but tell me why or why not. Why do you agree that we should eat more insects? Or why don't you agree that we should eat more insects? And then 5, tell me what do you think the strongest point is that she makes. So if you had to convince someone to eat insects, right? Which one of her arguments would you use if you only had to choose one, whether or not you agree? Alright, so like Chick-fil-A. Alright, so I'm gonna put 15 minutes on the clock. And then once we all finish, we'll come back together and ask, and I'll have some of y'all give me your answers to your questions. Sí.
Hey, yo voy primero.
Javier told me first, I'll let him go first.
I got
Go ahead.
Mientras más, que no me hagan. Trajo un papelito.
Just because.
So 15 minutes, it's 10:15.
Primero salimos de aquí, no manches.
Yeah, bien rápido, ¿verdad?
Thank you.
I just don't want to come near you. I'm gonna take your dad.
Necesito my pencil.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is the
Yeah. Okay.
the
If you have your,
the shield.
if you have your
It's a
card
sheet.
or a picture of your card, just take it up there with you. I'm gonna let them.
Where is it? Come on. Oh. So, what are some things that you're supposed to support that? So we talked about a few, but remember guys, complete sentences. Complete sentences.
Se tiene que hacer a la escuela.
No sé, nomás si a lo mejor hay muchos casos.
Oh, me lo dejo. You know that this class is about a half day, so it's supposed to be
Yeah.
short classes, 30 minutes.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
So,
We leave 12:45 we leave. And
Sure.
12:30, like on 12:25 we come back to our advisory, we wait 20 minutes and then 25. 12:45 we leave. Bye.
wait, so that's not even like 1 hour.
Yeah, I know.
What's the day? It's just gonna be the same thing.
Yeah, it's basically the same.
Oh, last question. What's the
Yep.
Miss Sister and Miss Blanca and Miss Dora are not here today.
That's kind of weird.
Well, we have a lot of teachers out.
I know, but it's been like 2 days. No. My birthday is tomorrow, yes, because
Oh, yeah,
it was
yeah,
Thursday and
Friday.
Friday.
No, that's 3 days today.
But when it passes Monday, it's going to be 3 days now, tomorrow. But if it doesn't come tomorrow, so that means that will be 3 days and they didn't come. Do you think it's still in out of town?
I'm sorry?
Do you think that they're in out of
No, I
town?
think they're together.
Well, I'm not gonna comment on that.
No, but I'm saying that, do you think they are in out of town because my sister told me that she's going to visit her family for Christmas
Maybe, I'm not too sure.
and she's trying to go to Dallas here to make a time.
Make sure y'all are finished going, y'all should be on the third one at least. Yep. Yep. This? Oh, okay.
question?
No. So the third one, so the fourth one, that's a good question. This one is just overall. Do you agree with this one? With this argument that we should use?
About this?
So do you agree with all of what she's saying?
You mean when I'm on the question, the first question, on the book?
In the book, like overall, do you agree with what she's saying about why we should be considered?
Mire, usted qué opina? ¿Usted apoya o no apoya?
Apoyo, pero creo que sería difícil porque no estoy acostumbrada.
Porque lo que yo también estaba diciendo lo mismo, apoyaba, pero porque me gusta la idea, pero a la vez como que pues
It's hard.
no soy tanto así como ellos.
Yeah, definitely.
But I feel like it depends how you look. Like, como dijo que if you're poor and you need something to eat, it's whatever you can eat.
Yep.
There's no hay decisión. Es lo que se puede hacer.
And actually, a lot of famous delicacies now were made because people were poor, right? And they didn't have anything, so they made something, and now we consider those things delicacies, and they're expensive now. All right, 7 more minutes.
Can we go ahead and go back up there?
Roberto Sasson.
I'm gonna wait till she texts me back.
Roberto just talking about you guys.
Watching something appropriate.
So this is a good answer for us to why people want to eat insects. But on page 18 specifically, why do Chinese people eat insects?
Oh.
So remember, that's why we're looking at this page. So revisit that.
Miss, you can keep going that pencil.
I'm sorry.
No, you can keep it.
Oh, this one? No, you can.
I got another one.
I have some. I just keep track of them.
No, I got it.
Wait, so, the whole school is going to use your mask for now.
Bájale, imbécil. Yo voy a tirar igual de este.
Alright, 5 more minutes. Make sure you're finishing up. Okay,
Hey, Scott, can you make sure you get access to KNC staff as office?
Y mira,
Yeah, are you in work too?
Alright, Roberto, you're gonna answer number 3 for us. Whenever time runs out, Ezekiel, you're gonna answer number 4. Javier, I want you to do 5, and then Bethsaida, I want you to give me another reason for number 3.
What about the third one, the third question?
Oh, you'll do. Oh, Roberto's gonna do 3.
The third, 4, and 5?
And then she's gonna
Mire,
do
¿cuál es la quinta? Oh, I got the fifth. I got fifth. Okay, I got it. Y Roberto salió medio rojillo, muy bajo, pero se puso muy feíto. Roberto fue un poquito, ¿de qué?
Y qué expensive quiere decir que cuesta más.
Una pregunta que
Es el
Pero ahí tenemos
No,
en
ya el 31, güey, está bien chido. A ver, fiesta.
¿Cuándo?
31.
¿De quién?
Mi amigo, es la madrina de mi madrina, del cumpleaños de su hija.
¿Qué vas a hacer?
26.
¿Sí?
Ya.
Oh, está chiquito. ¿Y van a hacer fiesta grande?
Ya, tiene bastante botellas. En unas, like, mi madrina pone en un archivo y tiene todo para eso.
¿Y no invitan? Para uno bien. Dale, pa. Para uno bien palo.
Oh, pero tiene bastante botellas.
¿De qué, güey?
Tiene las.
Oye, ¿se ha probado el Young Wicks?
¿Ah?
El Young Wicks.
¿Qué es eso?
El tequila Young Wicks.
Ya.
Está bien rico.
¿Sí?
No está duro, está suavecito y dulce. Está bueno. Búsquelo el Young Wicks. Está caro el güey. Está bien caro, pero está
Ahora
rico.
los tequilas están caros.
También el tequila blanco está fuerte. Ese
Alright,
güey
guys,
sí
I
quema.
see some of you are still missing answers for the last two. Please make sure you're finishing those up.
Mira, la gente.
Mira.
For question number 4, remember, please make sure that you're giving me a reason as to why you chose yes or no,
Ya, a ver.
or maybe.
Me sucede en 4.
Huh?
Pues soy en 4.
Ezekiel.
Ah, oh, Roberto.
I still want you to answer on your paper.
No sabo cómo se llama Roberto. No sé cómo se llama Roberto. ¿Cómo se llama?
You just said my name.
¿Qué no?
Guys, make sure.
What's funny? A ver, pues no deja ver.
Es lo que puso ella.
No
En
se
su
puede.
Instagram.
A ver, ¿no?
I see you put maybe, but
Se llama
why?
Montoro.
Why would you say maybe?
Es Amy.
No, that's her.
No, güey, eres Imo. Bro, everything you put on your story, like when you dress, it's all black.
Give me why you would agree. So, you know, como me lo explicaste, just write that down.
Voy a poner maybe porque, like, it depends on your type of money.
You
resources.
follow me.
Yeah, so you can put that there and then make sure you're reading this one.
No, you follow me.
No money higher again, maybe watching so much porno.
Alright, one more minute, guys. One more minute.
Again. How you gonna, how someone gonna hack your account again?
What?
No te tenía
No te entendía nada. Habla español.
Nada chido para nada tampoco.
Que le di el caso a él y luego me
¿A quién?
¿A quién?
Somebody, I don't know him.
Why would you give your profile to someone?
I gave him the password. Y luego he given him his password.
¿Y por qué se lo vas a dar a alguien que no conoces?
I know him.
Pues no que no.
Alright, guys, it seems like we're done, so we're gonna move forward.
Está cabrón.
Oh,
Es tu
ya
novio.
entendí. Es su novio y se le dice por tener su cuenta.
What's his name?
Pero ese es un emo.
Es
también.
emo, bro.
Yeah.
Eres emo, dad. Cuando you put something in your story when you're dressing, like just all black.
Yeah.
Negro, dad.
Alright.
Y mira, va gente
Alright, so Betsaida has number 2, Roberto has number 3, Ezekiel has number 4, and Javier has number 5.
Simón, cool.
Alright, so firstly, together, what are some arguments that we looked at for us to why we should eat insects?
Go Brazil?
Luego.
No.
So everybody together first, what are some arguments that we talked about in the beginning for why we should eat insects?
Miss, pero le toca a Betsy.
Okay, who's Betsy? What's one extra one that you found?
Que no compré mucho.
No cuesta mucho, right? So they're inexpensive. So inexpensive. Alright.
No, number 2, Miss.
No, we're yeah, you're right. Alright, so they're inexpensive. And the other ones that we talked about is that they're nutritious. They're easy to what?
To cook.
To cook, yeah.
No, to harvest.
Harvest, yes.
Harvest. No, but.
Alright, what are some other ones that we talked about?
They're the same thing as a lobster. So
Yeah, we already eat similar things, so we already
Oh. No.
eat similar things. Alright. if you go to page 21, what's one other thing that we're missing for as to why we should probably eat insects?
Did we say this good on nutrients?
So we said good on nutrients, yes?
Easy to catch.
Easy to catch, so I think that would go with easy to harvest.
Okay, what about
They're cheap, besides
your money?
Yeah, so that's what besides said, so they're cheap.
Okay,
Look at page 21, what's the other one?
oh my god, me dio la cola.
The last one.
Me dio la cola.
21, right?
Yeah, 21.
There's a lot of them.
Okay.
Chingo de insects.
So yes, that's not on page 21, but yes, there's a lot of them. So,
They're not going to stay quick.
a lot of insects, yep. They're not
Oh,
going
there's the doctors has even found that some insects have medicational properties.
Yep, so they have medicinal properties. Alright, so that's another reason why we maybe should eat insects, right? They can help with coughs, they can help with some fevers, right? Depending on the insect. Alright, number 3. Roberto, this is yours. According to page 18, why might some people like to eat insects?
Why people might like to eat insects? It's like from China, right? It's like a tradition. They eat insects.
Yeah, so because of tradition, right? They might just like to eat insects, right? There's some things we eat just because they're part of our culture, right? Or they're
Yeah.
part of our tradition.
Los tamales.
Alright, there's one other reason that's pointed there as to why they might like to eat insects. What's the other reason?
They're delicious.
So yes, they're delicious, but what else? There's one specific one on page 18.
18, right?
Yeah.
What about this about it's good for your diet, for your nutrients?
Yeah, so they're nutritious, yes, but that's not the one I'm looking for.
Why in American or British person might like something with a uniform and smooth texture like a cheese sandwich?
Yep, so one reason they might like to eat insects is because what? The word that starts with T?
Cheese. Oh, texture.
Texture, right? So they might like to eat it just because of the texture. What is that noise?
It's whiskey.
Whiskey.
Alright, so thank you, Roberto. So according to page 18, right, people might like to eat insects because of tradition or because of the texture. Alright, again, make sure you have these in complete sentences. Number 4, Ezekiel. Why do you agree with the writer's argument? Why or why not? I really like what you put down.
Well, kind of. I kind of agree about that because some people love the insects to eat them. They always want to try them, but some people they don't like to try because they think the insects are nasty and they don't know what kind of parts of the body they have in there. That it can be poison, like sometimes it can be bad for you.
Alright,
So they're not too sure if it's good for you or not.
alright. So according to Ezekiel, he says maybe because
Some insects are delicious, but some of
Yeah.
them are not good for you.
he says maybe because honestly, maybe some of them aren't good. They're unusual. They might be nasty. And then I saw that you put they might be poisonous, right? We don't know what's good or not, so maybe poisonous. All right, awesome. All right, Javier, number 5.
What do you think that the right strongest point is for eating insects?
Yep. So Javier, if you had to convince someone to eat insects, and you had to use one of this author's arguments, which one would you use? Or which one do you think is her strongest point?
Yeah, I would use the one that if you're like down on money, like if your resources in your life are not good, like they're easy to catch, they're easy to cook, they're really good at nutrients, and they're delicious. You just have to get used to them.
Yep, awesome, right? So I liked
Not more.
how specific that was, right? So if you don't have the resources to feed yourself, insects are a good alternative, right? They're easy to catch, they're inexpensive, and they're nutritious.
And you can cook them.
Huh?
Like you can cook them too.
Yep, and you can cook them too. Awesome. Alright guys, make sure they're in complete sentences. Make sure your name's at the top. We have 1 minute. Alright. Thank you. Make sure you pass the books forward. Awesome. Thank you guys for your participation.
What is your name?
Está,
Oh, your name.
estos maquillajes se están quemando bien. Se están quemando bien.
¿Ves? ¿A que no creer?
Me voy para México.
¿Cuándo vas?
I don't know, maybe para las vacaciones de
Spring break?
Spring break. Voy un ratito nomás a ver a mis abuelos. Es que ahorita las cosas están bien en México, con los Zetas y el nuevo cartel
Sí,
que
son
salió.
bailarinas.
Oye,
Se llama uno que el chango. Hay uno que apenas salió que el chango. Y anda muy recio ese señor, anda con todo. Y los Zetas andan enojados. Así que está feo ya en México. Pero como quiero ir. Si me muero, ahí lo dejo. La vida es...
Oh,
¿Y voy?